Hey y'all, welcome back. Today I'm so excited to share with you a very chatty, quick, easy tiptoeing into fall or autumn makeup, and I wanted to share with you some of my most favorite and nostalgic products from BareMinerals because they are some of my favorite products to use when I have very easily irritated, textured skin like I do now. They do such a beautiful job at smoothing the appearance of things out, so I want to share all of that and more with you in today's video. So let's get cozy and get into this video. So I have already done my skincare routine, applied primer, and I've done a little bit of targeted concealing with my NARS Soft Matte Complete Concealer. This is the stuff I do whether I'm using liquid foundation or powder foundation. I use two shades. I use vanilla around my eye area and then any little spots I want to cover. And then a newer shade I've been using is the shade Light 3 Honey. This is a shade I use around my mouth, almost like a color corrector. And I like to do this here in this step and let it set for a little bit, so that way it can have time to warm up, melt into the skin, and dry down, so that when I buff my powder foundation on top, it doesn't move all over. Totally optional step, but it's a step I like to take, especially if I have really stubborn spots I want to cover. Speaking of my prep, oh my goodness, my husband and I had some friends ask us if we'd be interested in dog sitting for them while they went on vacation. We said sure. And keep in mind, like, we're very much the couple who are happy just to be by ourselves. We like having friends over, we enjoy seeing people, but when we come home, we very much enjoy just the two of us being home without children, without pets. So we're like, okay, this will be fun. And oh my goodness, it has been such a workout. She is a really, really good little girl, but she needs so much, so much time and attention. And we're trying to like get our stuff done throughout the day. And then if you're not giving her attention, she barks. So I finally have a point in my day. My husband has taken her for a walk. I've got some time to sit down and record. So we are going to record, and my prep has been on my face for about 2 hours. So I'm going to rehydrate using my Lisa Eldridge Seamless Skin Makeup Enhancing Mist. The dog is very much taken to my husband, and she likes me when there's food. So recently my skin, with like just the weather changing, things are getting drier, and my skin is still going through a lot of changes with adjusting to the highest dose of my HRT. My skin has definitely become a lot more prone to sensitivity. So I find myself having to take a little bit more breaks between how often I can shave, because if I shave every day, which is my default, because I was doing some IPL hair removal, but as my hair has kind of thinned out with HRT, a lot of my hair has started to go like very, very light or translucent, which isn't really affected by IPL or laser. So I need to get that taken care of with electrolysis. It's just very expensive. So I'm saving my pennies waiting for that. And on the days when my skin isn't as silky smooth as I would like it to be, I have been going back to my BareMinerals. This is one of my favorite products for textured skin, because no matter if you have texture, stubble, facial hair, a lot of vellus hair on your face, this is a foundation that you can buff into your skin in thin layers, and it never looks heavy or cakey. It just kind of melts and blends into the skin. Today, since I want to go a little bit warmer for the autumn color palettes we're dabbling into, I'm going to be using the original formula, the shade Fair Ivory 02, and this is a neutral undertone. When working with the BareMinerals, I like to use a very small amount in the cap, and then I'm going to use the BareMinerals Beautiful Finish brush. I purchased this brush years and years ago, back when I still worked at Sephora, so that would have been 2014-15, and I have just continued to love this brush, and it's held up so well. So I always like to work in quadrants when I'm using BareMinerals products, because I like to take my time and buff. And with the amount that I applied to my brush, it's going to give me a little bit of coverage, but I find with BareMinerals, it's very much a quick build formula. So you need to apply a little bit more thinly and then work your way as you blend up. Because if you apply too much and you go in too heavy from the start, I find it can look a little heavy and a little waxy. So I always like to work my my way in quadrants and then build as needed. And I find this brush just does such a beautiful job. It's almost like a skirted flat top kabuki. So you have the center portion, which is a lot more dense, like a typical flat top kabuki. But on the perimeter, you have these longer fibers, which are great for blending and softening the edges. So using this powder with this brush, it gives you a really beautiful finish, like the name of the brush, and it just keeps the skin looking fresh and healthy. Whatever I've left, I like to carry down my neck. Also, I love that we're getting more into the autumnal season. I love autumn. Even though the colors aren't the best ones for me, I still like to tiptoe in. Like the burgundy of this shirt dress, I adore with the floral pattern, and my basic silver jewelry really work for it. So I found this like pave chain last year, and I love it with it. For this would have been my end of August get ready with me to recap the month, and I was having some friends over. So I just decided to take the week off, focus on some other work I had to get done, and also just get my house where I like to be for company. So I'm very much a person who has my routines. I like to take care of certain tasks on certain days just to keep everything in a way, because I am someone who I get overwhelmed by clutter. So when there's a lot of clutter, it's just kind of like it rocks my world and I can't focus. I need things to be fairly tidy so I can navigate easy. I need to be able to find things easily. But when I'm having company over, I like to take things to the next level, and I like to almost go beyond cleaning my home, and I like to detail my home. So no, it's like one of those things. My husband is like, why are you doing this? Like, I pull out my refrigerator, I pull out the oven, I clean behind them, I go over and above. But I don't know, especially if I'm having like people stay the weekend, then I just want to make sure my home is perfectly tidy, it's warm, it's welcoming, our guest suite is fully taken care of, stocked with any supplies someone might need. Because, you know, a lot of times, even if you're just going to a friend's house for the weekend, it's like an escape from your everyday life. So I want to give my guests like a hotel experience. Like, this is their little escape from reality where they can be totally taken care of. So gave me an opportunity to get that all taken care of. And then our guest came over last Friday, and it was really lovely. We ordered incredibly delicious Indian food from one of my local favorite restaurants, and we played this really fun board game. It was just such a lovely night, and I love how much a night with friends has changed in my 30s versus my 20s. In my 20s, we were very much about going to the latest bar, going to all the new clubs and places like that. But now it's like, let's either have a very small intimate dinner, or let's get together at someone's house and play a game, have a nice meal, and just enjoy each other's company. It is one of my favorite things. That is going to be all I'm going to do with the shade Fair Ivory. I've always been someone who likes to keep several shades of my BareMinerals powder foundation on hand. So now I'm going to use the BareMinerals matte. This is in the shade Fairly Medium, and this is a little bit deeper than my skin, and I like to use this as like a bronzer warming shade, and this is something I love doing. So I'm going to focus this here on the lower half of my face. Since this is a skin tone shade but a little bit deeper and slightly cooler, I can use this to help areas of unwanted fluff to recede. Something else very interesting is I shared with you throughout the year my progression with working to be healthier, lose weight, and with just diet and exercise alone, I was at a point with my HRT, and I was starting to get some yo-yoing. So I had hit like my 45 pounds of weight loss on my own, just with diet and exercise. But then as my hormone replacement therapy bumped up in strength, I found it harder and harder to lose weight. So then I started bouncing. I would gain 5 pounds, lose 5 pounds, gain 10, lose 5. So it was this very much fluctuating weight. So then my doctor and we talked, and I began using a GLP-1, and this is very much being used as almost like a add-on to my diet and exercise routine. And I've been on it for 3 weeks. weeks as of today. In the first 3 weeks, my weight has shifted by 6 pounds. So that's, again, we're averaging the 2 pounds a week. So my pre-existing weight loss, I kind of bumped up from that 1 to 1.5 pound a week to the 2 pounds a week mark, which I'm really, really happy with. I'm excited to see, and hopefully this will help me get to where I'm comfortable at, where I'm healthy at. But my point that I am apprehensive about is, for the first time in my life, I have a lot of attachment to some of my clothing, and now I'm like, oh no, I'm losing weight, and clothing that I love is getting bigger, and it's getting to the point where even if I pin it certain ways, it's still looking a little too big to kind of wear, and I don't want to part with it. So I'm looking into starting to sew, so that way I can alter my clothing that I love and give it a new life. But I don't want to go too crazy because I don't know what size I will end up being, and I'm excited. I'm very, very excited. Now that I've got the foundation on, I like to go through and use a tiny bit of my BareMinerals concealer. This is in the shade Bisque. Again, this is a loose powder formula, so I apply it very much the same way, and I'm going to use a little fluffy eyeshadow blending brush just to buff coverage where I want it. And if you've seen my videos before, you know I don't generally, especially for everyday, love to do a full opaque coverage. So I kind of higgly-piggly will apply it a little bit here and there, and if something's covered, good. If it's not fully covered, I'm also very much okay with that. I believe back when I was at Sephora, BareMinerals almost had like a flat packing brush that they would suggest using with this concealer, and I found it always put on a little too much coverage. So I've always very much been a fan of applying this concealer with a fluffy eyeshadow brush. And then for around my mouth, I always will go back with a little bit of extra product and just brighten up. Here's where the video gets interesting, because as I was trying to figure out my routine for smoothing the skin, this almost shifted into a routine where I wanted to spotlight some BareMinerals products I love, because I feel like BareMinerals is a brand that doesn't really get a lot of love here on social media. So I've gone through my collection and I've pulled out all of my BareMineral products that I currently have. Unfortunately, some of them are discontinued. If you ever see something in like a TJ Maxx, Winners, Marshalls, and you're curious, you can give it a try, or this will inspire you to use something that you already have in your own collection. First thing I'm going to use is one of my favorite BareMinerals products. Sadly, this was discontinued. This is the BareMinerals Invisible Bronzer. I have the shade Fair Light, and something crazy about this bronzer is on the back I have the expiration date as 2019, and I used to be very much in the habit of doing this. So for powders and things like that, I would always put the year 3 years after I started using it on the back of the product, and that was like my manufacturers it needs to go. Powder products I'm a little bit more lenient with, but 2019, that means I purchased this bronzer in 2016, and I believe this was a backup I purchased because I've gone through one of these in the past. But I love this bronzer. It's really, really lovely. I haven't used it in quite a while because it is discontinued. So this lived in one of my drawers, which I call my makeup archive. And this is something I loved when I used to wear a lot of fake tan. I used to be a huge fan of the classic Saint-Tropez bronzing mousse. And I found when I would wear that, this would be a great bronzer. It's okay. I feel like it's pulling a little, almost like a copper, like a coppery bronze. We'll see. It's so fascinating. It was something that I found really intriguing, especially post 2020. After the pandemic, I think I've only used a self-tan 2 or 3 times since the first lockdown happened. And before that, I was very much like almost like a slave to my self-tanner. I felt like I needed it to do it every week like clockwork. If it was a big week and I had like something to go to midweek, then I would sometimes repeat my self-tan process midway during the week. And I remember it was something I always dreaded. And after everything slowed down and we went to more stay at home, I'm like, I don't need to do that this week. I am using just a little bit of the bronzer through my socket line to make things feel a little bit more cohesive. I don't remember this powder being so powdery, but it looks like just a ton of powder has sprayed all over my desk. So maybe the binding products have worn down over the almost decade that I've owned that product. This is a new product. I purchased this at the beginning of last year, and this is the BareMinerals Gin Nude Highlighting Blush in the shade Rose Glow. And this was a product I had been very curious about because I hadn't tried anything new from BareMinerals at the time in quite a while. And I purchased this in preparation for a trip I was taking to London. And I remember I packed this for my London trip, and I ended up wearing this as my highlighting blush and eyeshadow for the bulk of the trip. And I was in Space NK at the Battersea Power Station, I believe it was called. It's either the Power Station or the Power Center. I think it's the Power Station. And we were in the Space NK, and the sales associate helping us complimented on my blusher. So that was a fun little nod. I feel like my face, as I'm looking at my face in the mirror behind my camera, I feel like I'm turning kind of orangey green. So that can make for an interesting video. Let's continue on. So there is the BareMinerals Hiding Blush in Rose Glow. Now I'm gonna use another archive product. This is from the original release of the BareMinerals Gin Nude Blonzer Blush Plus Bronzer. And the shade I have is Kiss of Pink. These are still available. They are now in black compacts. And when they first released, there was only 3 shades, but now there's either 5 or 6 shades available. I'm gonna go back to that large brush I used with my bronzer, and I'm gonna apply this here on the front of my cheeks. I find this is a really pretty shade. It very much does give that kiss of bronze, but I find it does hold a little warmer. I find for me, it can go a little orange if I'm not careful. So I find I need to ground it, and I just need to really modify and play with it and blend it so it feels cohesive. So that's why I'm adding it to various parts of my face and my eyes. I have the BareMinerals Mineralist eyeshadow palette, and this is in the shade variation Ultra Natural. This palette is described as a cool neutral palette, and I find for the most part most of the shades do run fairly cool neutral, but it does have some shades that on my skin, like this shimmer and this brown, they end up in a little bit more slightly warmer. So I'm going to start off with the shade Accrue 1 and use a large fluffy brush. So using the shade Accrue 1, I'm going to use this as a base on my eyelid just to create a little bit of a foundation and add light to the lid to make it look big and bright. I'm going to continue with the same brush, and I'm going to use the shade Dawn 5, which is almost like an olive brown, and I'm going to use this just in my socket line to add a little bit of shape. It's interesting, I've mentioned in previous videos, I keep all of my makeup kind of separated by the 4 primary seasonal color palettes: winter, spring, summer, and autumn. And this is an eyeshadow palette I keep sorted with my autumn makeup, as I feel like this is a great everyday palette for a neutral autumn. So it can either go as like a very subtle everyday palette for like a soft autumn or deep dark autumn. And it's so fascinating because I feel like if someone had a warmer skin tone than I did, then these would definitely pull a little bit more cool neutral than they do on my skin. But that's just one of the really fascinating things with how relative color theory is. Now I'm going to use my same brush with the shade Shell 4, which is like a rosy champagne, and I'm going to use this on my eyelid. The combination of these shadows, it's really pretty. It's subtle, but it's not groundbreaking. This very much is reminding me of a similar look I can create with shadows from like ColourPop, Maybelline. So they're pretty, but they're not standout. I don't know if I would pay the mid-range BareMinerals price for this. And this is a palette I've had for quite a while. I purchased it several years ago at Ulta, and it just was never like a big standout favorite. So it's kind of gone underused in my collection. I'm gonna switch to a small little pencil brush, and I'm gonna use the shade Taupe 2, which is a deep matte, almost like charcoal brown. And I'm gonna use this to roughly sketch a little bit depth on my outer lash line and here into the outer socket of my eye. This is very much gonna be like my contour for the eyes. I just wanna create a very soft haze. I don't really feel like the shadow is doing a lot. I switched to a smaller brush because I wanted to get a little bit more color payoff, but it's very modest, we should say, with the pigmentation. I'm getting depth, I'm getting color payoff, but it's gradual. I am going to pick up a little bit of the shade Slate 6, and I'm gonna try using just a little bit of that right here. Okay, that's giving me a little bit more depth, which I like for this outer corner, but it is minimal. These are very minimalistic shadows in terms of payoff for these deeper, darker shades. If you're someone who wants a deep, dark, smoky shadow, this wouldn't be my first choice. In all fairness, this shade is labeled as Slate, so I'm not looking for the intense payoff that you would get with like a traditional black eyeshadow. I just want a little bit more. I'm gonna now use my Sephora collection colorful pencil in the shade number 51 Stone, just to add a little bit of liner. Blend that out. I'm gonna use a flat lip brush, and I'm gonna use the shade Taupe 2 just to go through and soften my pencil and connect. I liked it for that purpose. It was really nice for blending and smoking out pencil eyeliner. I'm gonna use a mix of the two middle matte shades and use that to connect my liner to the inner corner. So that way it's not an abrupt stop, but it's just a little bit softer than it adheres on the outer corner. That way I have a really nice frame for the lash line. So now I'm going to keep using that same brush, and I'm going to use the shade Sandstone number 3, which is a little bit more of a, we'll call it like a rose copper. I'm going to use that here on the lower lash line. It's very subtle, but it does just enough to give a little bit of definition to help round out the lower lash line without feeling heavy. But depending on the coloring of your skin under, I feel like you could very much just wipe away some concealer under your eyes if it gets up to the lash line, and you would have a very similar effect in contrast with the concealed under eye. Overall, it's okay. I'm still not wowed by this eyeshadow palette. Like, we got a decent look, but I feel like this is something that we could very much achieve with a palette at any other price point. Before I finish my eyes, I've got two different Lisa Eldridge lipsticks I thought would be really great with this look. So they are both from the Lisa Eldridge Luxuriously Lucent. The first shade I have is Spirited Away. Spirited Away with this look is playing a little bit more rosy. And then the other shade I have is Painterly. I like the warmth that this is giving with the look, but it feels a little out of harmony with the dress. I'm gonna start with Painterly. Okay, much better. Painterly is the better choice of the two. Mauve lip pencil. And I'm gonna use a little bit of that Anastasia gloss and Girly. Add a little bit of something. Yes, I feel like that's a great combo. I can't say this is my favorite lip color. I don't know if I would wear this every day. Maybe if I did a heavier, more full coverage bases. Right now, I don't love how this lip shade is playing with the rest of my collection, but I like how it goes with the look. So we're gonna go with it. I'm gonna finish off with mascara. Benefit Bad Gal Bang. And this is in the shade Wild Plum. For brows, I want to keep things fairly simple. I'm going to use my e.l.f. Wow Brow in Taupe. And then let's give this a mist with the One Size Powder Melt setting spray. Okay, so now that we've got our look on, hair's finessed, we are gonna finish off with the fragrance. And when I was trying to figure out what type of perfume I wanted to wear for this look, I was stuck between two. So the ones I have on hand are Miller Harris Violet Ida and Mont Blanc Signature. So the way I'm gonna do things today is I'm gonna start off with Miller Harris Violet Ida. This is a really beautiful powdery fragrance. There's almost something slightly Play-Doh-y about the fragrance. Like, it does have almost like a slight clay-like quality to it. I really love it, and it's a really warm blend of carrot seed and violet, and as it dries down, there is a little bit of a subtle creamy vanilla nature. On top, I'm going to use a little tiny bit of my Mont Blanc signature. This is a warm vanilla fragrance. It's very warm, it's very cozy, and when layered together, they create a really warm, powdery vanilla shade, and it has beautiful longevity. Miller Harris Violet Ida has been discontinued. You can still find it, I believe, on the Miller Harris UK size in the larger size, which is 100 ml or 3.4 ounces. And then I have the 50 ml size of the Mont Blanc signature. I believe here in Canada, this retails for like $110. But if you go into like a gray market fragrance site like Fragrance X or Fragrance Buy, you can get this for around $30. That's where I got mine, and I love it. It's gorgeous. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I am so excited to be moving and tiptoeing into the more autumn color palettes. This is my first attempt at tiptoeing into warm, true autumn for the season. Now, that being said, I feel like now with the lips, I'm a little bit closer to deep, dark autumn. We don't have enough warmth altogether for the warm, true seasonal color palette. But as we tiptoe and proceed throughout the rest of the month, I will get a little bit more into it. So thank you so much for spending your time with me today. Let me know how September is treating you so far. Until we see each other again, I hope that you're taking care of yourself wherever it is you are in the world. Bye, y'all.